And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another waffle wraparound. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we take ourselves all the way to Western Australia and the Western Australian Football League as we have done it, folks. We have gotten to it. 21 rounds of waffle football are over. We are at the finals stages. We must talk the last four rounds and preview the finals. Starting off, we will see Paul Persick here a little bit. He's stuck in traffic. He will join us a little bit later, but joining me as always from Waffle Footy, from WA Footy Facts, it's Rick Gauchi. Rick, great to see you again, sir.
Hey Donny, well, we probably should have just prepared the URL for the website before we kicked off today, so we didn't splutter through that. So wafflefootyfacts.net, but no, we'll get there eventually.
I
Good to see
just
you,
really
Donny.
need
Hope
to
you're
write
well,
it down. I write it down. Okay. I am physically writing it down. WAFL footy facts dot org, right?
mate. Net, no
Dot
net,
net, dot
not
net,
net. Yeah,
eraser dot net. Physical proof. I have written it down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
work, Donny.
Now that I've finally done that after about 3 months of continuing to say I would do that. Rick, it's great to see you, sir. I see you're rocking your Swans hat because you are a happy man as your beloved Swans are in the finals. How up and about are you, sir?
Yeah, mate, it's good to see. Thanks, Donny. Yeah, mate, yeah, Swans are a team that don't play finals very often compared to some of the other teams in the Waffle. So it's great to have the boys back in there and a position in the top three, which really gives us a good opportunity to advance through the finals. It's going to be tough for the boys from Bassendean, but they're in there with a chance. And finals are a new season, so we're as good as a chance to win as any of the other five teams left in the competition. So getting a double chance for the first time for about 11 years. I think 2013 was the last time we had a double chance in the finals. Historically, we don't do the best in finals with I think a 30 and 35 record in the history in finals for Swans, but we're there. We're with a chance, and fingers crossed we can get a big win starting off with a qualifying final this weekend and make us get through to the grand final, because it would be massive if Swans can get the grand final. Big following and big supporter. So yeah, fingers crossed for my boys, but it's going to be tough.
It's
We'll look forward to a great final series, which we'll preview later on.
It is never easy, but the one thing is you're in a little bit better stage because you can afford to lose one and still have the chance to win a premiership. So the best part about finishing in the top three, you at least get that double chance. So absolutely fantastic. Like I said, we have 4 rounds to cover really quickly. Like I said, once Paul hops in, we will greet him and have him hop in as soon as he does. So we will start with round 18, just Rick and I. Let's go through the results. We start off with the Perth Demon, with Perth knocking off West Coast 94-46, East Perth beating West Perth 67-49, Peel beating Claremont 112-77, Swans getting a nice 20-point win over the Subiaco Lions 88-68, and East Fremantle smashing their South Fremantle rivals 118-52. If you look at it, a round where the teams that should win were the ones that won.
Yeah, pretty much right, Donny. Yeah, so pretty easy victories in most cases there for all of the teams. And as a ladder expected, I guess from a ladder position, Perth beating West Coast was a slight upset because Perth were on the bottom of the ladder, West Coast were eighth at that time. But you probably expected Perth to win that anyway, and a pretty comfortable win for them. The Royals in the Perth Derby was pretty close, with West Perth with a couple of point lead at 3/4 time, but East Perth's 4 goals to one in the last quarter got them over the line by 3 goals in a good win for the Royals. Peel, big win over Claremont. So Claremont were doing pretty well at that stage. That was their first defeat well, the second defeat after losing to Swans the previous week, but they had previously won 5 in a row. So Claremont just losing a couple of games there, but they haven't lost since. So a defeat there for Claremont against Peel. Swans, as expected, a relatively comfortable win over Subi. Well, that was pretty close up to 3/4 time, and Subi actually had a lead at half time in that game. But a big last quarter again, 4 goals to 2 got Swans over the line, and the Sharks dominated South Fremantle by 11 goals in a massive win for East Fremantle, which really started getting them back into some form coming into the finals.
Yeah, and that's definitely for sure. Like, it's very interesting. Like I said, you're looking at it at this point is like Subiaco is still fighting to try to make finals, and that hurts with the loss there. So it'll be interesting. So we jump to round 19 as we see East Perth beat the West Coast 118-51. Subiaco bouncing back, beating Perth 156. Claremont getting a nice win over West Perth 83-53. Peel Thunder edge out South Fremantle by 10, 71-61. And unfortunately for my co-host East Fremantle with a little bit of a whooping to the Swan Districts 100 to 64. So oh boy. So I just got a message from Paul. I think he may be a little bit later than he originally attended. This is what we call live podcasting. So, I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, again, the better teams won. Peel, a little bit of a test from South Fremantle.
Yeah, that was probably the tightest one there. Yeah, they were really, really pushed against South Fremantle in that game. So Peel, the last few rounds, haven't looked like themselves totally. I'm not sure whether that's some Fremantle players coming in and out of the side and a few injuries there. But yeah, South Fremantle really fighting for their season at this stage. So at the moment, they're half a game outside the finals. They need to win every game to sneak in and hope other results go their way. So a missed opportunity there for the Bulldogs with Peel just getting in by 10 points. Other results, as we mentioned, East Perth dominated the Eagles. Subi and Perth was an interesting game. Perth were actually a goal in front at three-quarter time, 8-7 to 8-1. But Subi actually kicked 8 goals, 3 to 1 point in the last quarter to really just demolish Perth. It sort of reminded me of Subiaco's heyday, 10 or so years ago when their last quarters were dominant. And they really put Perth away in that game. Claremont, convincing win against West Perth, although West Perth's inaccuracy probably let them down 6 goals, 17. Although Claremont also kicked 17 behinds, but they kicked 11 goals. And Swans were really outplayed by East Fremantle in the first half. It was commented by the Swans captain that they'd try to change their game style against East Fremantle that game. I'm not sure why they would do that. They should play their own style. And it sort of showed the first half they were pretty abysmal, to tell you the truth. The second half was much better, and Swans won the second half slightly. But East Fremantle still a pretty confident boosting 6 goal victory against Swans in that game.
Yep. So we jumped to it. We jumped around 20, and I think this is the one I almost messaged you guys if I needed to send Noah's Ark because I saw some of the highlights. I mean, it was an absolute drenching in some of these games. I mean, it looked like they could go puddle diving, and the scores really reflect it because running through it, Peel Thunder beats Swan Districts 54-23. Yes, 54-23 was the final score. East Perth beat East Fremantle by 3, 33-30. South Fremantle edges Perth by 5, 43-38. One of the few times that somebody scored more than 60 points is Claremont beats West Coast 79-21, and West Perth beat Subiaco 58-42. I mean, it's not hard to say, it's not hard to argue that some of these scores, they're a little bit lower because the weather was just absolutely atrocious. Like I said, I saw a couple of the highlights. There were puddles the size of like Michigan over here on the ground over there in WA. I almost wanted to go. Do you guys need Noah's Ark to get away from all the rain?
Yeah, well, the last 2 weeks were pretty wet weather. I was actually overseas in Bali, so I missed these last 2 rounds of fixtures. But I definitely saw some of the highlights and tried to catch some of the games on the stream. But I did watch some of the Olympics and I watched the water polo, and I'm not sure whether I was watching water polo or Australian rules football when I was watching these replays. Some of the worst conditions we've seen in the WAFL for, I reckon, probably back to 2016, where we had some pretty wet days, I recall. And yeah, and there was some pretty heavy weather round 20. And the scores pretty much showed that. The Swans game, Swans and Peel. Swans recorded their lowest ever score against Peel, and I think the seventh or eighth lowest score ever in the history, scoring only 23 points to Peel's 54. East Perth and East Fremantle, a very low scoring game, leadable oval. Um, is not well known for its drainage and its ability to handle wet weather, and that was pretty much a quagmire with East Perth getting over the line for the second time this year against East Fremantle by 3 points, and amazingly the fifth time East Perth won a game by 3 points throughout the year. So, they also lost by a point to Swan. So East Perth have had a lot of close games. And losing a couple of those games would have found themselves further down the ladder rather than taking the minor premiership. So East Fremantle 3 goals 12 wet weather football doesn't tend to augur well for accurate goal kicking. So 3 goals,
Mhm.
12 was probably expected in that wet weather. Having said that, the scores in the South Fremantle Perth game, 7-1 for South and 6-2 for Perth, pretty much denies that. So a pretty good win there for South. Again, keeping their slim finals chances alive. With that victory, Claremont, as you mentioned, dominated West Coast and West Perth. A bit of a surprise. They ended their 10 game losing streak, which was their third worst in their history, which goes back to 1891 as the oldest club in the WAFL. But they did turn it around and finally get a victory, defeating Subiaco by a couple of goals of 16 points. But yeah, very wet weather football that week, and it didn't really improve very much heading into round 21.
Well, the scores are at least with round 21, at least you saw some scores. I mean, you do have at least the triple digits, and so it improved a little bit. But I remember seeing the highlights of some of those games, which is like, I mean, literally the ball would hit the ground and stop because it would hit a puddle. So there's one thing though, that they didn't have to worry about sweating too much. They were more worried about wiping the water away. So those footies at the end of the day were probably as hard as a rock because they were probably so waterlogged. They probably weren't
Yep.
going to be pretty much useless after that particular game. But it shows you that footy is a sport that can be played in a little bit of everything. So it was
Yeah.
fascinating to watch. So we jumped around to 21, the last of the regular season games, and looking at my message board, unfortunately, Paul is not going to be able to make it, unfortunately, a broken down car on his way to work has delayed him.
Mm.
So, unfortunately, he will not be able to make it, which is sad. I love having Paul on, but we will soldier on, Rick and I. So, we will get through this. Only two predictions for the grand final we will have today instead of three, but that's okay. So, we jump to round 21, the last round of the home and away season sees East Fremantle beat West Coast by 70, 89-29. Swans get a nice win going into final 74-19 over the Perth Demons. South Fremantle fall and beat West Perth by 17, 81-63. Quick mental math there. Nice job, coach.
Mm.
And East Perth beat Peel Thunder in the top of the table clash by 20, 49-29. But impressively enough, 13 behinds kicked by East Perth. Peel's got to be thinking their lucky stars. This could have been uglier than it was. And Claremont with the win, ending Subiaco's chances of finals 100-51. So that is it for this round. Wow, Rick. Wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty big round that like any of the teams from third to sixth could have pretty much raffled those positions. So Swans, who had held third place on the ladder for a number of weeks, if they had a loss to Perth, would have missed the finals potentially. East Fremantle could have finished anywhere from third to sixth, as could have Claremont. South Fremantle, barring a miracle, could have also finished from third to sixth. So it was a pretty interesting and exciting last round of fixtures. The final five wasn't determined until the Sunday game between Subi and Claremont, with Claremont having to beat Subiaco in the last game of the season to scrape into the finals. And they did that pretty convincingly. It didn't look like they were really challenged by Subiaco, and a pretty dominant victory for the Tigers to get them into fifth place, and probably the form side along with East Perth. Both East Perth have gone into the finals on a 4-game winning streak, and Claremont on a three game winning streak. Are the only teams in the finals that have got a streak going, with the Sharks and Swans just winning their last game of the season. So East Fremantle, a big win over West Coast, but as expected, West Coast just had 7 AFL listed players playing for them, so probably one of their weakest sides they've had for the year, and a
Mhm.
pretty easy victory for East Fremantle. The Swans did have to fight hard against Perth, particularly in the first quarter. Very strong breeze at Bassendean Oval, but were way too strong in the end. A pretty convincing win by 9 goals. The biggest thing I think for Swans in that game was the injury to Tom Edwards. He was sort of taken out behind the play a little bit, a young Perth player. And unfortunately, he's been concussed, which means he's out for at least the first 2 weeks of the finals, which is really disappointing. He's a key player for Swans in the forward line, and with Lee Coleman as a bit of a double act as key forwards there. So a bit of a loss for Swans, but that did sort of free up Coleman, who kicked 6 goals, pretty much once Edwards was injured. So that did help him a little bit in that game. South West Perth was a good game. I think at the end of that game, West Perth were challenging South Fremantle. They did hit the lead in the last quarter, but South sort of steadied and kicked the last 3 goals to pull away and win by 3 goals in that game, which at that stage put them into the five. They were hanging on for dear life, expecting or waiting for the final result between Claremont and Subi on the Sunday. The top of the table clash, East Perth haven't finished on top of the ladder for 10 years. They needed a win to get to the top of the ladder. Peel have never finished first or second, for that matter, at the end of any season. So their second place for this season for Peel was the highest they've ever finished on the ladder. So well done to the Thunder, but the Royals getting the chocolates in that game and the minor premiership. So well done to East Perth. Peel did struggle in that game. They did have a couple of their key players out, and Brody and I think Reedy. So they will expect those players back for the finals this week. So a massive last round of fixtures, which has really led us into an exciting final series where I think all the teams are pretty even. And when we get to that, I'll run you through the head-to-heads for each team versus each team in the finals, and to see sort of how close it is and how it's pretty much anybody's this season, which is great to see.
Yeah, I love it because you go into the finals going, yes, you look at it as 4 and 5 elimination final, have a tough road. It's not going to be easy, but there are a couple of good sides. You just never know. So I'm super excited. I think this final five is going to be absolutely fantastic. I think a lot of the state leagues, I think there's a lot of intrigue going into the finals. So we'll jump to some real quick burning questions. I do apologize, Rick. I forgot to put a Swans question in here. So
Oh, that's okay.
but
We can handle that.
it's perfect. It's perfectly fine. We'll get to talk plenty of Swans as we go through. So we'll start off at the top of the ladder. The Royals, after a long and grueling season, are the minor premiers. Is this their year to win a premiership?
Well, I think they'd have to go in as favourites. Any team that finishes on the top of the ladder in a top five final series has got massive advantages. They have the break this weekend. They've got a couple of players who are a little bit banged up. Hamish Brayshaw, Scott Jones, and a couple others are carrying some injuries. So to give them a week to recover is a big bonus for East Perth. If they then win the second semi-final, then they get another week's break. So sometimes that can be also detrimental to the team's momentum, etc. But I think for East Perth, they've got some strong bodies in that team, experienced players, and I think that's only going to all go well for them through the final. So I think they're favourites. Finished minor premiers for a reason. They're only losing a handful of games over the season, just the 4 losses. Surprisingly, though, those 4 losses, well, not surprisingly, those 4 losses have all been against teams they could play in the finals. So it's a big season for the Royals, and congratulations to them to their first minor premiership for 10 years. So I think
Mhm.
there's definitely favourites at this stage, although, again, I can mount a case for all 5 teams in the finals this season, which is very rare.
Which is also good because it keeps a lot of intrigue going into the finals, which
For
is
sure.
very interesting because now I shoot to the bottom of the five and we go to Claremont, who battled back to make it into the final five. Are they a dangerous fifth seed or are they just making up the numbers?
Yeah, I think again, I did have that early season preseason prediction that Claremont wouldn't make the finals. They nearly didn't, so I was nearly right. They just scraped in the last game of the season. But I think they, as did Swans. Swans started 2-4. I think Claremont were 2-5 or something beginning of the season as well. So massive turnaround for the Tigers. They found their mojo for the second half of the season, and with 9 wins out of their last 11 games, sort of go into the finals. I think along with East Perth and East Fremantle, probably the 3 form sides of the competition. So this is a massive game. I know a few commentators have stated that this might be the game of the final series between East Fremantle and Claremont. So easy, these 2 teams could have finished in the top 3 places. But I think Claremont, I don't think they're making up the numbers. I don't think any team is making up the numbers this season. So they're definitely a chance to get through. They fit the luck of the draw. They're playing East Fremantle, who don't, as you probably know, Donny, have struggled to have a home ground available for them this season, and they've been sort of travelling all over the state playing home games. And this game, although East Fremantle had the right to play a home game, they're actually playing at a Claremont's home ground. So that could well give the Tigers the edge, although the Sharks did defeat Claremont quite convincingly earlier in the season at Claremont Oval. But historically, for the last 10 years, East Fremantle don't have a good record at Claremont Oval. So I think this is going to be a kick in this game. I know we haven't previewed the game yet, but I think Claremont are definitely a chance to go through.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where it's very interesting that 4-5 matchup because and it kind of is a great transition because East Fremantle look to defend their premiership. They get a chance, they have a chance to go back to back. It's not going to be easy. Can they get it done, or is this just going to be too tall a task for the Sharkies to go back to back?
It's going to make it very hard for them for sure. Coming from the elimination final, the only team that's done that in the years that we've had an elimination final is Peel Thunder back in 2016, I think it was. But they had like 18 AFL listed players playing for them through the finals. So they were very, very strong side. And it was very hard for anyone to knock them off, even the all conquering Subiaco of those years. But I think Ishiman have probably got the best chance out of all of them. I think Claremont can definitely win the elimination final against them, but I can't see Claremont probably progressing any further than the preliminary final if they do. But I think the Sharks, excuse me, if the Sharks do get through, um, they could well get right through to the grand final. I wouldn't put it past them to doing that. Um, so I think again, each of the five teams can play in that grand final. So there's still a good chance to defend their title, but it's going to be difficult from fourth place.
Yeah, definitely. They will if they get another flag, they will have earned it for absolutely for sure. So that is through it. That is all my questions. We've gotten to that lovely time. It's the predictions. We get to see how well do we actually know this. Let's jump through the five. So we'll see the opening day matchups. We'll see the 2-3 matchup between Peel and Swan Districts, and the 4-5 matchup between East Fremantle and Claremont. We'll start with the elimination final. East Fremantle, Claremont. Who do you say moving on? Who do you see going home?
Well, this is a tough one. They split their games 1-1 for the season. Um, I think it's a toss of the coin. I really, I'm going to say Issue Mantle just by maybe a goal or two. I just think they're a bit more stronger side all around than Claremont. Um, so I think the Sharks would just get over the line in this one, but there's not going to be much in it. And I do think this is probably, I think all these matchups in the final series could go either way. Um, I mentioned that having a look at the head-to-head records for all the teams in the finals. East Perth, East Fremantle, and Claremont are all 4-4 against top five teams. Peel are 5-3, Swans are 3-5. So there's pretty much 50-50 for all of those teams in their matchups throughout the season. So it's really going to be very tight to pick who gets through. But I think East Fremantle maybe by 8 points potentially in this
Yeah,
one.
I'm gonna go East Fremantle in this one. I think Claremont's had to battle back. Did they use too much energy to get to the grand final? The Sharkies, again, they're coming off a grand final. I don't think they're gonna want to go out in the first round. So I'm with you on that one. I think East Fremantle. I know it's at Claremont's ground, but again, I think the Sharkies just a little bit too strong. We jump to the head versus heart tip for you on this one. Qualifying final: Peel Thunder versus Swan Districts at Lane Group Stadium. What are you looking at here?
I'm going to go reverse psychology for this, and I'm going to say Peel's going to win by 10 goals.
I love your
Look, I
thought
think,
process on that.
yeah, I think, well, Peel have won the last five games against Swans, so Swans have had a hard time matching up against Peel, and potentially Swans could play both Peel and then East Fremantle, and look at probably a straight sets exit from the finals. Unfortunately, because they're the two teams I think I fear the most out of the five that are in the finals. I don't think we match up very well against them. Having beaten both East Perth and Claremont this season, I'm more confident against those two teams. Um, I think Peel is really going to depend on their attitude. The Dockers are now out, as you know, from the AFL. So that restricts the Peel team to only having 12 Fremantle Dockers listed players. Historically, when Peel have made the finals and the Dockers haven't, Peel have faded out in finals. When Fremantle have continued to play, Peel have done well and actually progressed well through the finals. So it really, I think, depends on that attitude. Will those players really be giving 100%? Will they know that they're not going to get picked up next year? Are they playing under the pressure of getting a contract for next season? Are they worried? Well, not worried, but have they switched off because the AFL listed players are now having their Mad Mondays and celebrating and doing their Bali trips and all that sort of stuff? Um, the likes of Tabernar, whose maybe AFL career is sort of hanging on a thread. is he going to be able to perform? And players like Brody, if he gets through injury, he's not been given opportunity by the doctors. Is he going to fire, or is he going to be a little bit low? I think that is the point. I think Swans know their game, and Swans will play their way. I think Swans are definitely good enough to beat Peel, but I really think it comes down to the attitude of the Peel AFL listed players. So I think Peel may be too strong for Swans in this one, but I think this is the chance for Swans to get them, being that it's the week after the Dockers have been eliminated from the final. So I'm hoping Swans will win, of course, but I think Peel may just get us. But come on, Swannies.
I'm one of those you handle it a lot like I handle sometimes with the Swans tips is like sometimes I will intentionally that I will tip against the Swans knowing one of two things. I'm good either way. If if my team loses, I still get the tip right. If my team wins, then at least I get the win. I get to celebrate the win of my team. So I'm gonna tip Peel in this one, but just because they do have that AFL talent and they have a little bit more finals experience than Swans does, which I think will come in handy. I don't think Swans are going to be competitive. This is gonna one of those. I think it's gonna come down late in the fourth quarter. Swans will be in it. I hope that they don't get the yips when it comes to it late in the game, and they have that where they've lost a few close games. So, but I think Peel wins this one, but Swans do not disgrace themselves. I think they play super well in this one. So, with that, both of our tips were the same. So, East Fremantle will then face Swans in the first semifinal, and the second semifinal will say Peel face East Perth. So, we'll do it again for the first semifinal. Who's going to move on to the preliminary final, and who goes home? Swans, East Fremantle.
Again, I'm going to do reverse psychology and say Shumanel's going to win this. I am a little bit concerned that I guess that the Swans' form in the last couple of weeks hasn't been 100%. And again, the two teams that worry me the most are Peel and East Fremantle. I think if Claremont beat East Fremantle, I think Swans will beat Claremont. But I'm concerned that if East Fremantle do beat Claremont, that I think they will be too strong for Swans. Swans should have beaten East Fremantle in the first game here, and they lost after the siren and gave away a 4-goal lead in the last 10 minutes. So Swans can beat East Fremantle. But I think, yeah, pains to say, but I think we might be going out in straight sets. So I'm going to say East Fremantle will just get over Swans. But I don't want that to happen, of course. Swans will win in my head, but and my heart,
Mhm.
but I think East Fremantle might just be too good. So I'm
Yeah.
really hoping my elimination final is wrong and Claremont win, because then Swans will win the first final. That's
Well,
where I'm going with that.
I'm going to jump on your bandwagon. I'm going to jump on the Swans on this one.
Good on
I
you,
think the
Donny.
Swans have played a little bit better. I think East Fremantle again, a Claremont side. I think Swans have a little bit more momentum. I think positively playing Peel, staying close, I think will give them some good momentum. I think Swans will move on to face the loser of that second semifinal. And for me, East Perth Peel, East Perth, top of the table. You come in fresh, you go up against a team. If you survive that first quarter and don't get down early, you then have fresher legs. You'll then run over them. I like the Royals to stamp themselves into a grand final pretty easily over Peel Thunder in my opinion. I know it won't be easy, but I think East Perth is just going to be a little bit too good for Peel on the day.
Yeah, I think so. You're probably right there, Donny. And again, it's all about that attitude for the Peel players, and I think that's going to be the key throughout the finals for the Peel Thunder side. East Perth, they'll be itching. They haven't won a flag for quite some time now, nearly 20 years or just over 20 years. Haven't been in a grand final for 10 or so years. So I think the Royals are primed. I think they'll do Peel and move into the grand final.
Alrighty, so Swans v Peel for me, East Fremantle Peel for you. I have Peel unfortunately knocking off Swans here. I think Peel will be their kind of Achilles heel with this. The Swans are just going to go, why do we keep getting the same team? So I will see. We will get a rematch of the second semifinal in the grand final of East Perth and Peel in the grand final. So for you, East Fremantle, Peel, who gets the right to face East Perth in the granny?
Yeah, well, this was my preseason prediction for the grand final, which I copied from obviously from last year's, and I did say Peel will win the flag this year in my early season predictions by defeating East Fremantle. Um, so I'm just going to say that's going to happen, but it's 1 week early. So I think Peel will beat East Fremantle um, in that game. Again, depending on the attitude of the Peel players, but I think that'll be a pretty close game. Wouldn't be surprised if the Sharks do win and get through to the grand final. But I'm going to still say Peel in this one.
And we'll get to it. Grand final. We'll see both of us having the same grand final. Peel Veal versus East Perth, a rematch of the second semifinal. Who do you have raising the flag at the end of the 80 minutes?
Well, we've all gone pretty much as expected, I guess, with the tips, and have really gone out of our way to get the first versus second team playing in the grand final. And I'm going to keep to the script, and I'm going to say East Perth are going to win their first flag in 20 plus years. I think they're a very well-rounded side. If they can have the strongest midfield they can get, I think it was Shoemaker may be injured, so he may be struggling to make the finals. But other than that, I think they should be pretty close to full strength. So I think East Perth, you know, they probably deserve to go through the finals. So Peel had lost 5 games for the season. They did lose twice to Subiaco. So they weren't obviously switched on. So they can be a team that can be switched on and switched off throughout the season. East Perth pretty strong throughout the season. So I think the Royals will win the grand final by about 4 goals over Peel.
And I will join you in that. I have East Perth getting that flag, finally getting over the hump and getting a flag after a few years of not being able to have it. I think the Royals just too strong. It'll be I think this is going to be a fantastic finals. I mean, again, I'm taught we're flipping coins on every single one of these games because I could literally make an argument for why each one of my tips is wrong
Yeah.
and the one that I tipped is wrong and the other one should be right because that's how even this five is. I cannot wait. It is going to be fantastic as always. WAFL footy will be fantastic. Cannot wait for it. As per usual, Rick, another fantastic chat with you. I know that time is a little bit short. You got to get going, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. Again, I will do my usual. How are everything going on the website? Any new things on there, or has it still been a little difficult because of all of the games that you got to get into the website?
Yeah, I haven't updated too much on the website. A couple of small little additions to my website, and you can always check out my site updates page and my socials for updates. But nothing too major. Just continuing on with the season updates. I've been quite busy with work and other stuff, and another little side trip I had to Bali with my mates over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, the website's still going well. It's still there. So make sure you check it out for the head-to-head previews and my extended match previews for the finals. All available through the links on the homepage. But yeah, no, it's all going well. In the off season, I'll be continuing to add some more player data from the pre-war years between World War One and World War Two years to sort of increase the number of players in my database to around about 10,000. So I think there's about 13,000 that have played at least one game of the WAFL football. So we're getting there. But a lot of hard work, a lot of research required to fill in some gaps, particularly with limited information in the media back in the 1910s to 1920s. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's going well. But Donny, thanks. Yeah.
Well, I love the website. Like I said, one of the first times I went to your website, I think I got lost for 20 minutes because I just kept going, "Ooh, that's really cool. Ooh, that's really cool." Like I just got absolutely lost in the website. Like I decided to pull it up because I'm going to say it again. This time I'm going to say it right. WAFLfootyfacts.net. This is a fantastic if you want to learn the history of this fantastic competition. Thoroughly enjoy this. Like I said, you could spend hours just looking at the statistics and everything that's on here. It is absolutely magnificent. A great connection for if you want to learn more about the WAFL. So that is going to do it for our episode today. Again, thank you so much, Rick. It is always a pleasure talking with you. We will hopefully have
Same.
Paul back for the grand final review, talk about the season as a whole, and wrap up WAFL WAFL and WFAF, AFLW for the season for this particular 2024. So that'll do it for Donnie's Disposals. Again, if you like what you are listening to, please like and subscribe. Always enjoy learning and meeting new Australians, Americans, or anybody who just loves footy. So that'll do it for us, and we'll be back with more footy very, very soon.